Zimbabwe cash crisis worse. About Venezuela once again.
Systemic important banks. They removed the 1,000 thing on there called monetary awareness. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RT News updates. And as you tell from today's title, inflation, central bankers are playing with fire. I'm also surrounded by two central bankers holding burning currencies. So today I have about 5 articles I want to share with you, all dealing with what's happening in the news in regards to the concept of inflation and the increase in the cost of living in Europe, as well as what my expectations are for the United States in 2018. And so before I dive into those, as always, tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have an RTD live talk with Giant Bandari. And so we're going to cover a lot of these issues dealing with inflation, third world status, and hyperinflation, and tax reform, and all types of topics. So I want to encourage you guys to call in at 8:30, and toll-free number is 1-833-LIVE-RTD. And as always, if you're new to RTD, I want to encourage you to click the subscribe button for more RTD News updates, live talks, as well as interviews. And if you're new to Rethinking a Dollar altogether, I want to encourage you to visit the RTD University page, where I put together all my prior interviews dealing with monetary matters such as the ones we're facing now, where inflation is going through the roof, which makes the cost of living very uncomfortable. And so for more of that, just feel free to click the link at the very bottom of this video here. It'll take you right to the RTD University page. And so as always, let's dive into these articles. So the very first one here is from Reuters, and it says ECB Draghi sidelines critics to keep money taps wide open. The next one here is from CNBC. It says Bank of England unanimously votes to hold interest rates, shifting focus to inflation. The next one here is from Zero Hedge, and it says ECB unveils new higher inflation forecast, pushing bond yields lower. The very next one here is from FX Street. It says US dollar at a crossroads with inflation concerns still key. And then the very last one here is from Bloomberg, and it has to do with the hyperinflation in Venezuela and how they measure that process of the fact the bolivar is inflated away to absolutely nothing down there. So the very first one, and as always, before I dive into this any further, I want to encourage you to click the links below so you can read more for yourself, as I plan on just skimming the surface just a little bit and sharing my thoughts with you upon these articles. So just to give an idea what's going on here, it says the European Central Bank on Thursday stuck to its pledge to keep money pouring into the Eurozone economy for as long as needed, despite opposition from some rate setters and increased growth and inflation forecasts for the area. So right there it says keep money pouring into the Eurozone. They are counterprinting money out of nowhere at alarming rates. It says the ECB raises Eurozone growth forecast from this year through 2019 and nudged up its expectations for inflation, now seen at 1.7% in 2020, close to its target of almost 2%. To go on a little bit more, it says better than expected growth, and to a lesser extent, inflation are giving fresh ammunition to critics of the ECB's 2.55 trillion euro or 3 trillion bond buying program, such as the Dutch Central Bank Governor Klaas Knot says. So 2.55 trillion euros have been brought into existence to prop up their economy and to, quote, ease things and make it flow smoother. It says, indeed, 2 central bank sources told Reuters that a majority of ECB rate setters at Thursday's meeting wanted to signal that the ECB may change its easy money pledge if Eurozone inflation keeps accelerating. So the idea that they're talking about hinting at changing their easy money pledge if inflation keeps accelerating, they're questioning that. It should be a given. It says their suggestions include dropping a pledge to continue to buy bonds until inflation converges to the ECB's target, or the option to increase purchases if outlook worsens. So dropping a pledge to continue bond buying. It says some people want to say that if inflation continues to increase, we will be forced to change the forward guidance perhaps. So the idea that they are all measuring the amount of money they bring into existence depending upon the economy there, as far as there being enough liquidity in the market to prop up the banks. They're buying up everything they can and running out of things to buy. So here's some more things here if you want to dive into it further. It says here, having faced 5 years of anemic price pressures, the ECB has deployed its entire policy arsenal, cutting rates into negative territory, giving banks cheap loans, and soaking up bonds with an unprecedented 2.55 trillion euros of purchase. So here, this right here summarizes the entire catastrophe underway in the Eurozone. The fact they're in negative territory, which means savers, people who are depositing funds in the banks, are losing money because they're inflated away. It says giving banks cheap loans, so they're able to borrow money at unbelievable cheap costs. And then the ECB, a independent party in and of itself, is creating digits out of nothing and pumping it into the market, buying actual bonds and things of that nature. So just a little bit of info what happening in the Eurozone. Not much different in the UK. It says Bank of England unanimously votes to hold interest rates, shifting focus to inflation. And so as of recently, the interest rates were not changed. It said the Bank of England voted 9-0 to hold interest rates and quantitative easing. It says they're also printing money out of nowhere. Current monetary policy aims to shelter a fragile UK economy amid Brexit uncertainty. All eyes are now on the potential for future rate hikes as UK inflation hits multi-year highs. So they're suffering from a continuous increase. And just give you an idea what that looks like, it says the focus now moves into inflation, which is at a 5.5-year high, putting pressure on the bank to raise interest rates in order to temper the rising living costs. So because of the easy policy there and the troubles they're having from their government and this Brexit situation, they've been bringing money into existence for no apparent reason other than to sustain the banking industry, as well as just the so-called recovery that they're not really experiencing, robbing savers, and it's also rising the cost of living in the UK. So I've read several articles that shows how the price of goods and just the cost of service there are going through the roof, but yet they're talking about continuing to do more of the same thing. So there's more here if you want to read into it. But other than that, that's just giving you an idea of what's going on. Inflation in the UK and in Europe itself is a little bit on the high note. And then what really stood out for me to this article here from Zero Hedge is the fact that it says ECB unveils new higher inflation forecast, pushes bond yields higher. And as I read through this, it's real short, but it's just the idea that these monetary policy figures, these gentlemen and young ladies that are on these boards, they're only doing is just putting together forecasts. They're putting together their projections on what they think the numbers may end up being. And so as it says here, 2017, 2.4% versus 2.2 in 2018, 2019, 2020. And ultimately, they're guessing. They're guessing on the fact that they don't know what they're doing other than the fact they have a easy monetary policy, which is to promote inflation, to keep things from deflating and causing problems in the debt market. So they're just creating money out of nowhere, robbing savers and robbing investors because they've destroyed the actual ability for people to price true goods and services nowadays because everything is inflated. Next one here, this has to do with the dollar. It says US dollar at the crossroads with inflation, concerns still key. It says the outlook for the dollar has taken a hit over the past 24 hours, now seems to be a near-term crossroads, and inflation could be the driver. The main catalyst has been a weaker than expected reading of the U.S. core CPI inflation, which dipped back to 1.7. And so as you know, as I always report here, that the Federal Reserve is chasing inflation. They're really looking to try to get their target of 2%. And so they're coming up short. So they're baffled at how this is going to happen. And so as you can see from everything happening in Europe and the UK, they're having problems with a little bit too much inflation. And so also over here, as we're beginning to tighten these interest rates, we're going to run into a problem, I believe, in 2018, where we will not have a problem reaching our 2% and probably going beyond. It says, fast forward then to FOMC decision to hike the interest rates by 25 basis points last night. It says, however, there were a couple of dissenting voters, Evans and Kashkari, but coming in conjunction with no increases to the inflation expectations. This suggests that the Fed remains very wary. Although not specified, the growth enhancement coming in without inflation expectations being revised higher reflects continued concern of an inability to move the needle despite the strong labor market. So they're doing everything they can. Apparently employment is doing good. All the statistics that they typically use are where they should be, but they're still falling short of that 2% inflation rate. And so as it says here, they're very wary. So and the very last one here is from Bloomberg, and it's a way in which analysts begin to try to measure the amount of hyperinflation that's happening in Venezuela right now. And so they measure it by the cost of a cup of coffee. And so it says Venezuelan Café con Leche index, so Venezuela coffee with milk, says tracks hyperinflation 1 cup of coffee at a time. And then it's quoted here, says, mirrored in a brutal economic collapse, Venezuela refuses to publish basic statistics. So we created our own to gauge the measure of one of the most important of all missing figures, inflation. So here we have just a chart, and it says most recent price of the bolivar to a dollar is 20,000 bolivars for $1. And it says annual inflation rate, and this is measuring an entire year. It says 1,618%. And so scroll down a little bit, it gives you an idea of where the bolivar was. It's 2,000 bolivars here at the beginning of this year. The bolivar has been inflated away so bad that it continues to spike up to the point where now it takes 20,000 bolivars to get you one cup of coffee, or it could be the equivalent of, say, what we would consider $1. So this is a quick snapshot of what's happening in the news when it comes to the term inflation, and how I believe that central bankers are playing with fire, because once they let the cat out the bag, it is no putting that thing back in as far as them achieving their goals of 2%. As you can see, these two gentlemen here have kind of reached it, and they're concerned with how to tame the horse, so to speak. And here in the United States of America, as we begin to tighten up a little bit, and we are falling well below our so-called 2% mandate of inflation, how we're going to collide somewhere in 2018, where the fact that we're tightening and they're continuing to ease. And so, as it says, EU is in a negative territory, still quantitative easing or counterfeiting money to buy up everything, and the UK is doing the same. But yet here on our end, we've kind of changed our policy, but not too many people really know or remember or really taking the fact that we were the first country, because pretty much initiating the financial catastrophe with our banking system here, we were the ones to initiate the whole quantitative easing / rate dropping, to the point where it trickled into those other countries where they followed up by dropping rates and then began counterfeiting, or quantitative easing as they call it. And so right now, as they begin shifting their policy as we shift ours, it's going to put us in a position where come 2018 and beyond, and when they do reach their expectations of inflation of 2%, then that's to the point where we're going to really see what could be considered the second tier of a recession / crisis, because we're already at 1.5% interest rates. So how much lower can we go? So will we go to negative rates, true nominal rates, and then will we begin issuing some form of quantitative easing, or, as some of my guests have said in the past, injecting currency directly into the public's hands to kind of stave off the idea of having to go through the banking system again? So in my opinion, this is all not going to end well, because when they're chasing inflation, ultimately they're chasing a tougher way of life for you and I, as we're the ones that use these currencies to live upon. And so as they purchase less, it's going to make things tighter on the home front for all of us. So these are things definitely to be aware of. So just wanted to put these articles out here to you today, give you something to think about, and also chime in if you have any thoughts or ideas, or any other countries that might be suffering inflation that I may have not have covered, that you'll be wanting to hear about rather. So other than that, just want to put some information out there today. Look forward to seeing you guys tonight for the RTD live talk at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find the link for that down below as well. Look forward to having you guys call in to speak with Giant Bandari and us having some good conversation on matters such as these. So other than that, enjoy your day.